I wasn't supposed to work that night. New Year's Eve was my one hard line every year. No double shifts, no wristband events, no overpriced shots for drunk couples making out on bar stools. I always took the night off, went to some rooftop party, kissed the wrong guy, and woke up regretting the champagne. That was tradition. But this year, my roommate bailed on rent, I was behind on bills, and the bar I worked at, Gunners, offered triple pay and a slice of the door if I picked up a shift last minute. It was a no-brainer, money over mediocre kisses. I didn't find out he was working until I walked in and saw him behind the bar, shaking up a cocktail like he owned the place. Logan. Tall, smug, and built like a guy who knew his best angles and wore them like armor. We'd worked the same circuits all year, alternating between the same 3 bars downtown, always one-upping each other on upsells and tips. Our rivalry was unspoken, but very real. Last month, at that ugly sweater party at Blockhouse, he'd taken home $480, while I'd barely scraped together $320. I saw him smirking the whole night like he knew exactly how to flash a smile at just the right guy or lean a little too close over the bar for the right girl. Manipulative, shameless, effective. So when I saw him behind my bar on NYE, looking like a Calvin Klein ad in a black fitted tee and a gold party hat slightly askew, I almost turned around and walked out. He spotted me, of course, grinned. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, shaking the shaker one last time and pouring out 2 espresso martinis with a flourish. "Thought you were more of a pop bottles in the VIP kind of guy on New Year's." "Yeah, well," I said, sliding behind the bar and pulling on my apron. "Rent doesn't pay itself, and someone's got to clean up your mess." "Oof. Starting strong tonight," he laughed. "You gonna be this fun all night?" I didn't answer. I just grabbed the barback list and started lining up glasses. The usual. But it wasn't the usual. Because from the second the doors opened, it was game on. Logan was already throwing flirty one-liners at customers, and every third drink came with someone sliding him a 10 or a 20. Just because. I held my own, obviously. I had my regulars. A few couples I'd served before made a beeline for me, and I was working fast, clean, efficient. But Logan? Logan was a show. By midnight, we were neck and neck. Both sweating. Both laughing louder than usual. Both doing everything we could to be the bartender people remembered. People were dropping 20s into the jar just to get our attention. And I'll admit it, there was something kind of hot about it. The way he moved. The way he leaned across the bar. The way we'd bump shoulders mid-shift and pretend it was nothing. Midnight hit. The whole place screamed. People kissed. Champagne got spilled. Confetti rained from the ceiling. And then the storm hit. I didn't even notice until the power flickered and someone came in from the patio looking like they'd just been caught in a snow machine. I checked my phone. Blizzard warning. Transit shut down. Roads iced over. Ubers canceled. No one was going anywhere. At 1:45 a.m., the manager tapped us both on the shoulder. "You two, we're closing early. Storm's bad. You're stuck here tonight. Use the back office. Couches are clean-ish." And just like that, it was just me and Logan. Locked in, no escape, no crowd, no distractions, just us. And all that unresolved tension. The silence after last call always hits different. No music, no crowd noise, no cash register chiming. Just the low hum of refrigeration and the soft clink of empty bottles being sorted. Logan and I stayed behind the bar longer than we needed to, neither of us saying much. We cleaned in parallel, tossing glances when the other wasn't looking. Or maybe we both were looking. Too much had gone unsaid between us all year, and now, stuck together with no customers to charm, it felt like we were tiptoeing around something heavier than melted ice and spilled beer. "Manager left already?" I asked, tossing a rag over my shoulder. Logan nodded. Took the last SUV out before the city shut down. Said we could crash in the office or upstairs loft. I vote loft. It's less haunted. I chuckled, partly from the joke, partly from the absurdity. Guess we're really snowed in together. You say that like you're disappointed, he said, his voice a little quieter, more pointed. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I wiped down the last of the sticky countertop and leaned back against the cooler. He was watching me now, openly. No smirk, no teasing, just eyes that didn't look away when I met them. All right, I finally said, breaking the stare. Lead the way. We climbed the narrow stairs at the back of the building, past crates of liquor and emergency beer kegs. The loft was basically a glorified storage room someone had cleaned out a few years ago. Futon, space heater, old couch cushions, and a closet with dusty board games and staff Halloween costumes. A small bathroom was tucked in the corner, but it was freezing inside, the pipes groaning from the cold. Logan dropped his bag and flopped onto the futon like he'd done this before. I stayed standing, arms crossed, unsure if sitting meant this was normal now. Just two guys, snowed in, who used to fight over tip jars and now had to share a space. You good? He asked, watching me from the mattress. Yeah, just didn't plan on having a sleepover with you. He raised an eyebrow. Would it help if I promised not to bite? Would it help you if I said I wasn't worried? Logan laughed. But it wasn't cocky this time. It was softer. Like he wasn't expecting me to volley back so quick. We sat in quiet again for a bit. The wind outside howled like it was trying to push its way through the walls. I checked my phone. 0 bars. My friends were probably still drunk dialing each other. Meanwhile, I was up here with my favorite nemesis and half a foot of snow between me and the rest of the city. I took the other end of the futon, facing away, kicking off my boots and peeling off my wet socks. Logan stretched out beside me, shirt riding up just a little at the hem, and I caught myself staring at the sliver of skin before quickly looking away. This feel weird to you? He asked suddenly. What? This, us, not working, not trying to out-tip each other, just existing. I glanced over my shoulder. He was lying flat now, one arm behind his head, watching the ceiling like it had answers. Kind of, I admitted. I'm used to seeing you as the enemy. He let out a soft snort. Ouch. Enemy's a strong word. You were the one who started tipping customers shots for cash. I was just playing catch-up. I was hustling, he said, but I wasn't trying to screw you over. Honestly, I just liked having someone to compete with. Made the shifts less boring. I stayed quiet. Then he added, besides, I kind of liked watching you try to beat me. I turned to look at him. That's supposed to be a compliment? He shrugged. Take it however you want. The heat from the space heater buzzed low, filling the room with a warm haze that contrasted sharply with the frost biting at the windows. Logan shifted, turning onto his side to face me. You ever wonder, he said, voice low now, if we weren't rivals, if we just met at a party or something, what would have happened? My pulse picked up, subtle but insistent. Why? I asked. Because I'm wondering now. He didn't blink, didn't smirk, just looked at me, serious. And suddenly, the air felt different, heavier, charged. I mean, we've worked together almost a dozen times, he continued. And every time you look at me like I'm either the biggest asshole on the floor or like you want to throw me against the cooler. I laughed, caught off guard by the bluntness. You're not wrong. He sat up slightly, leaning on one elbow. So which is it tonight? I haven't decided yet. He smiled, but it was different this time. No teeth, no cockiness, just something real. You ever think maybe we compete because it's easier than admitting we're curious? There it was. No games, no subtext. I held his gaze, the thrum in my chest impossible to ignore now. Yeah, I said quietly. I've thought about it. And for the first time all night, neither of us had anything clever to say. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was me, maybe it was him. All I know is one minute we were staring across a beat-up futon, like we still worked opposite ends of the bar, and the next, we were towing some invisible line neither of us was ready to name, but neither of us was walking away from either. He sat up, slowly, careful, like he didn't want to spook me. "We can keep talking," he said, voice low, "or you can tell me to shut up, and we can pretend this never happened." I didn't answer right away. Just sat there, trying to figure out why I wasn't laughing this off, why my heart was thudding like I'd sprinted from last call to the alley out back. Instead, I said, "I don't want to pretend." He blinked, like he hadn't expected me to say it. Then he gave this little nod, almost imperceptible, and leaned back again, just enough that we were closer than we should have been. "You always this honest when you're off the clock?" "Only when there's a blizzard trapping me with a guy I've hated for a year." He laughed, and I felt it in the space between us, felt it in the way my chest relaxed just slightly. Logan didn't push it. He didn't reach for me or say something slick. He just laid there, close enough that our knees brushed when we shifted, and kept his eyes on mine, like we were mid-shift, reading each other's tells. "I never hated you, you know," he said after a while. "If anything, I was kind of obsessed." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to make you feel seen," he said, softer now. "Every shift we worked together, I'd come in early, just to see if you'd show up. If you didn't, I'd be annoyed the whole night." I didn't know what to say to that. "I guess I didn't know how to talk to you," he went on, "so I made everything a contest. It was easier than admitting I liked the attention." I nodded, barely. "Yeah," I said. "Same." There was something vulnerable about saying that out loud, like admitting it cracked the rivalry open and showed what had been hiding underneath the whole time. I looked over at him, and his expression was softer than I'd ever seen it. No showmanship, no performance, just Logan. I lay back beside him, our shoulders almost touching. We stared at the ceiling. It was stained with watermarks and old tape, where someone had tried to hang string lights once. The silence wasn't awkward, it felt earned. Like we'd both finally shut up long enough to actually be with each other. After a minute, I asked, "You always crash in this loft after closing?" "Sometimes. When the snow's bad, or when I drink too much and forget my jacket downstairs." I nodded. "So you've been here with other people?" He turned his head toward me. "No, not like this." My stomach flipped. We laid there like that for a while, breathing in sync, the heater humming, the wind against the glass like it was trying to remind us the world still existed outside this room. Then he asked, "Can I say something kind of honest?" "Sure, I've wanted to kiss you since Halloween." I turned my head, met his eyes. He was serious, nervous even. "What stopped you?" He smiled. "You called me a human Red Bull and said I had the subtlety of a frat boy on Molly." I snorted. "That sounds like me. So I figured you hated me." I paused, then said, "I didn't hate you, I just didn't want to like you." "Why?" "Because I knew it wouldn't be casual." He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I'd just handed him a confession he didn't know what to do with. Then, slowly, he sat up and shifted toward me. I didn't move. His hand brushed against mine on the mattress, tentative at first, and when I didn't pull away, his fingers settled over mine, warm and rough and unsure. "This okay?" he asked. I nodded, once. He leaned in, eyes flicking from mine to my lips and back. I could smell the faint hint of peppermint and whiskey on his breath. My pulse was ridiculous, racing in my ears like I was back behind the bar, juggling 5 orders and a fight breaking out. And then he kissed me. It wasn't fast, it wasn't rough. It was careful, almost shy, like he'd been thinking about it for a long time and didn't want to mess it up. When we pulled apart, I didn't open my eyes right away. Just sat with it, let it settle. When I did look at him again, he was already watching me. "Still feel like rivals?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not tonight." Outside, the wind rattled the old windows. The city was buried in snow. Roads blocked, no one going anywhere. But somehow, right here, in this weird little loft with peeling paint and a futon that smelled like old beer and peppermint schnapps, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of Logan. He didn't try anything past the kiss. After that, we just lay there, fingers lightly intertwined, every so often glancing at each other like we were checking if it had really happened. It had. It wasn't some half-drunken moment or snowstorm-induced hallucination. It was real. And now, lying here, while the wind howled outside and the pipes groaned in the walls, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How soft his lips were. How slow he'd gone. How careful. No performance. No competition. Just him. At some point, I must have drifted off. When I woke up, the light filtering through the frosted windows was pale and gray. The city was still blanketed in white. The snow hadn't let up. My phone buzzed once. No service. A notification that never fully loaded. Figures. I shifted slightly and realized Logan was still beside me, half asleep, hair messy, mouth parted just a bit. His arm had fallen between us during the night, resting just inches from mine. I turned onto my side quietly, not wanting to wake him. Just watched for a second. I'd never seen him this still before. He was always in motion, talking, moving, pouring, grinning. But here in the quiet, he looked younger somehow, softer. Then he stirred. His eyes blinked open slowly, squinting at the light. "Hey," he murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Hey!" He yawned and stretched a little, grimacing as he hit the cold air beyond the blankets. "Still snowing?" "Yeah, we're definitely not getting out today." He rubbed his face, then looked at me, and then he smiled. Not the smug one, not the flirty bartender one, just a real, sleepy, genuine smile. "I was worried I dreamed that," he said. "You didn't." He looked relieved. "Good. I'd have hated to wake up and realize I imagined the one time you actually kissed me back." I smirked. "You make it sound like you've been planning this for a while." He sat up slightly, propping himself on his elbow. "You want the truth?" "Sure." He scratched the back of his head, suddenly shy. "Since that Halloween shift at Blockhouse, you were dressed like a vampire, and I thought you looked stupidly hot. I remember watching you across the bar and thinking, yeah, I'm so screwed." I blinked. "You've been into me since then?" "I never said I was smart," he said with a grin. I laughed, shaking my head. "You were such an asshole that night." "I was flirting. You were insufferable." "Same thing," he said, nudging me with his knee. "Anyway, I figured you hated me, so I kept it competitive. At least that way, I got to talk to you." I sat up too, the blanket falling around my waist. It was freezing outside the warmth we'd built, but I didn't care. "That's kind of pathetic," I said, but my voice was soft. "Yeah," he agreed, "but it worked." We sat there for a moment, knees touching, the futon groaning beneath us. The city outside was still asleep, buried under snowdrifts. No honking, no sirens, just the kind of silence you never hear unless something has shut the world down. I reached out, took his hand again. He looked down at it, then back at me. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but I want to find out." His smile spread slow, warm. Same. The day passed lazily. We stayed in the loft most of the morning, sharing snacks from the bar's emergency stash, granola bars, pretzels, some unopened cans of seltzer. Around noon, we took turns in the tiny bathroom to freshen up, brushing our teeth with leftover disposable toothbrushes and splashing water that was way too cold. Eventually, we made our way downstairs. The bar was dead quiet, all the noise from last night erased like it had never happened. I stood behind the bar, leaning on the same spot I'd occupied for months, and watched as Logan moved through the space like he always did, graceful, confident. He looked over at me. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking." He walked over, hands in his pockets, and leaned across the bar until our faces were inches apart. "About," I held his gaze, "about how this used to feel like a battleground. And now, it just feels different, he grinned. Maybe we can make it our thing. The bar. Us. Us? He shrugged, casual but hopeful. If you're into it. I reached across the bar, hooked a finger into the collar of his hoodie, and pulled him into a kiss. Not long. Not showy. Just enough to say, yeah, I'm into it. When we pulled apart, he stayed close. You realize when this storm ends, we still have to go back to real life, I said. I know. And we might still work together, he smirked. You scared? I raised an eyebrow. Of you? Never. He leaned in again, lips brushing my cheek this time. We'll figure it out, he said. Until then, we're snowed in. Might as well make the most of it. And that's exactly what we did. By late afternoon, we'd completely surrendered to the reality that we weren't going anywhere. The snow had stopped falling. Finally, but the drifts were piled so high against the bar's front door, we could barely see through the glass. Plows hadn't come through yet. Streets were shut down. The entire city was on hold, so we stayed put. And, weirdly, it felt kind of perfect. We ended up camped on the old couch in the back office, the one we usually threw our bags on before a shift. Logan had found an unopened bottle of cheap whiskey behind the counter, probably left over from a staff party months ago, and we took turns passing it back and forth, using shot glasses that still smelled faintly like citrus cleaner. So, Logan said, his feet up on the coffee table, you ever think about quitting the bar life? Every week, I said, usually after closing with puke on my shoes. He laughed. What would you do instead? I shrugged, considering. Something quieter. Maybe finally go back to school. Get certified to do something normal. Therapy, maybe. He blinked. You? A therapist? I raised an eyebrow. What? You don't think I've got the depth? No. I think you've got the depth. I just thought you were too much of a control freak to sit still for an hour. I laughed. Rude, but fair. He sipped from the bottle, then looked at me more seriously. You'd be good at it. People trust you, even when you're being a smartass. I didn't expect that. Coming from Logan, who never said anything straight unless it was soaked in sarcasm, it landed differently. Thanks, I said quietly. What about you? I asked after a beat. What would you do if you left the bar? He leaned back, eyes on the water-stained ceiling. I don't know, he said. Something creative, maybe. I used to draw a lot, like when I was younger. Sketchbooks full of buildings, little cityscapes. Always wanted to be an architect. Then rent hit, and I picked up a bar gig for extra money. And now you're here, I finished. Yeah, he said, glancing at me, still stuck behind a bar, shaking cocktails for guys in designer hoodies who tip in crypto. We both laughed. It felt easy. Easier than I thought it would, after everything. After months of side eyes and under-the-breath comments, of racing each other to tables and competing for the biggest tips. Somehow this version of us, quiet, low-stakes, real, felt more natural than anything we'd done before, and maybe that's what scared me. Because real things? They're harder to walk away from. As the light outside started to fade, we raided the tiny kitchen again. This time we found frozen pizza in the staff fridge, half covered in ice crystals, and probably 2 months past expired, but still edible. Logan insisted on cooking it with chef's flair, which basically meant overloading it with red pepper flakes and drizzling ranch over the crust. We ate sitting on the floor of the back hallway, plates on our knees, the bar echoing with our laughter every time he said something ridiculous. It was easy to forget that this wasn't normal, that the world hadn't simply stopped to give us space. But when we finished eating, and I stood to stretch, something shifted. Logan looked up at me from where he was sitting, legs stretched out, and said, You know, it's wild. What? This is the first time I've spent a whole day with you, not trying to win. I didn't answer right away, because I'd felt it too, the absence of tension. The weird comfort of just existing next to him without posturing. It's kind of nice, I admitted, not keeping score. He stood and walked toward me, slower now. His expression had changed, still soft, but more focused. "I don't want to go back to how it was," he said. "Not after this." I felt my breath hitch. "We don't have to," I said. He stopped in front of me, just stood there for a moment. Then he reached out, not grabbing or pulling, just resting his hand lightly on my hip, testing. I didn't move away. "You sure about that?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." And then he kissed me again. This time it wasn't tentative. It was deeper, slower. Like we'd both spent the whole day circling this moment and finally gave in. His hand slid around my waist. Mine found the back of his neck. We moved together like we'd done it before in some other life. Smooth, natural, warm, despite the cold pressing in through the old windows. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads still touching, he said, "So what does this mean?" I didn't have a clean answer, but for once, I didn't need one. "It means I want more," I said. "Whatever that looks like." He smiled, pressed another kiss to the side of my neck. "Good, because I'm tired of pretending we're just coworkers." We ended up back on the futon, tangled under the same blanket, bodies pressed together like we were trying to erase the last few months of acting like strangers. His chest against mine, his breath warm on my collarbone, his fingers brushing along my arm in a slow, absent rhythm. No more tip wars, no more smug smiles across the bar. Just him, just me, just now, snowed in, finally letting go. By the next morning, the city had started to wake up again. We heard the plows before we saw them, grinding their way down the icy street in the early light, carving through what looked like several feet of packed-in snow. It was still cold enough to make your bones ache if you stepped too close to the windows, but the worst of the storm had passed. I lay there in the loft, watching the sun come up through a crack in the blinds, Logan breathing steady beside me, one arm slung over my waist like it had always belonged there. I didn't want to move. Not because I was tired, I just didn't want to break whatever spell had settled over us during the night. I shifted slightly and felt his grip tighten for a second, then loosen as he blinked awake. He groaned, face still half buried in the pillow. "Is it morning?" Unfortunately, he peeked one eye open and squinted at the light. "God, why is it so bright?" "That's illegal." I laughed and leaned over to kiss his temple. "You're dramatic." "You kissed me," he mumbled, eyes still closed. "Now you're stuck with all of it." I smiled, and for a minute we just lay there in the warmth of that dumb futon, pretending that time didn't exist. But time does what it always does, moves forward, regardless of whether you're ready. Eventually, we got up, packed our stuff, took turns brushing our teeth at the bar sink and wiping down the surfaces we'd used like we were regular employees again. The only thing that felt different was everything. Logan grabbed his jacket and threw me a look across the now clean bar. "You ready?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, let's go." We stepped outside together for the first time since the storm hit. The cold punched me in the face like an old friend with boundary issues, but the air was crisp, sharp, and weirdly invigorating. The sidewalks had been partially cleared, and we could see the tops of parked cars poking through piles of slush like sunken relics from some suburban Atlantis. Logan's car was still trapped in the side lot, encased in snow and regret. Mine was even worse, buried past the tires. We stared at them in silence. "So, coffee?" he asked, eyes hopeful. "Thought you'd never ask." We walked to the corner cafe, the one that somehow always reopened first after any disaster, the kind of place that served cappuccinos in mugs too small and croissants that were definitely frozen 2 hours earlier, but it didn't matter. We grabbed a table near the back, both of us still in yesterday's clothes, both of us looking like exactly what we were. Two guys who got snowed in together and came out of it changed. Logan stirred his coffee with one of those tiny wooden sticks and looked at me over the rim of his cup. "So," he said, "are we going to talk about it?" I sipped my coffee. "About what?" "Us." I set my cup down slowly, met his eyes. "What about us?" He gave me that lopsided grin, the one that used to annoy the hell out of me but now just made my stomach flip. "I meant What happens now? Do we pretend it was a fluke? A snowstorm thing? Or do we actually try this? I didn't hesitate. I want to try. His shoulders relaxed, just barely. Yeah? Yeah, I said. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it means for work, or us, or anything. But I don't want to go back to pretending. He nodded slowly. Good. Because I'm not sure I could. We sat there in silence again for a beat. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. It wasn't a big gesture, not dramatic or showy, but it felt huge. And in that moment, with the morning sun melting the last of the frost on the cafe windows, and the world slowly starting again outside, I realized something. All that time I thought we were rivals, we weren't fighting for tips, we were just fighting our feelings. And now we weren't fighting anymore. By the time the roads were mostly clear and life started moving again, it had been 2 full days since the storm hit. The shift back to normal was sudden, jarring even. Back to the same streets, same job, same people, but not the same us. We returned to the bar for our next scheduled shift 3 days later, this time together. Not that we announced it or anything. We didn't hold hands or show up matching or walk in making some grand statement. But something was different, and the people around us felt it. Jess, the barback, raised her eyebrows when she saw us walk in at the same time. "You two good?" she asked, barely hiding her suspicion. Logan and I exchanged a glance. "We're fine," I said casually. But the smile tugging at my lips probably gave too much away. The night started like any other. Music low, orders coming in steady. People crammed shoulder to shoulder, trying to forget that it was still winter outside. But Logan was different. Not in the way he moved. He was still fast, still smooth, still tossing lime wedges into glasses with that practiced flick of his wrist. But in the way he looked at me, in the way he touched my back when we crossed behind the bar, in the way he whispered jokes in my ear between orders. And I was different too. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything anymore. I wasn't competing. I wasn't trying to outcharm him or win the night. It wasn't a contest now. It was us. Midway through the shift, I caught him watching me while I muddled mint for a mojito. "What?" I asked, grinning. He shrugged, barely hiding his smirk. "You just look hot when you're focused," I snorted. "You're such a dumbass." He leaned in and said low enough for only me to hear, "But I'm your dumbass now." My heart stuttered in that way it always does when something real sneaks up on you. I didn't answer. I just bumped his hip with mine and passed him a drink he hadn't asked for, the way I always used to when we were just coworkers. Only now, the moment lingered longer. By the time the shift ended, the night had blurred into that quiet post-rush hum where the lights are still too bright, and the bar smells like citrus and sweat and cheap beer. We were stacking stools when Logan came up behind me and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Want to come back to mine?" he asked. I looked over at him. "Yeah, I do." We said goodbye to the staff, walked out into the brittle cold, and made our way to his place. A small studio just a few blocks from the bar, filled with books and half-finished drawings on the wall, and one of those tiny kitchen tables only built for two. When we got inside, he kicked off his boots, dropped his coat, and pulled me into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I've been thinking about this since that night," he said quietly, his hands on my waist. "Yeah?" I asked, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He nodded. "Every day." The kiss we shared then wasn't fireworks or fireworks. It wasn't urgent. It was slow, familiar, like we'd done it 100 times already, in some dream I didn't know I remembered. That night, we didn't talk about the past. Not the rivalry, not the shifts, not the tips. We talked about what we wanted, where we saw ourselves in a year, whether we'd ever really loved bartending, or if it just filled the space where other things should have gone. We fell asleep in his bed, limbs tangled, the heater rattling quietly near the window, and I remember thinking, this started with a snowstorm. But maybe it was building long before that. Maybe we were never rivals. Maybe we were just waiting for the right night to stop pretending.